guys, and welcome to the Fish Room. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today I want to talk to you guys sort of about the decision-making process for ending the summer tubbing season. Now, yesterday I had to do an emergency evacuation of fry from outside because the forecast has gotten super wonky. And some of the things you need to think about when determining when to bring your fish in is really based entirely on the forecast. Meet Pepper. I guess she got downstairs. Anyway, so our forecast, our weather has been predominantly in the 50s, high 50s to low 60s overnight. And I thought I had a few more weeks before I had to worry about moving in my fry. And then it got super cold, seemingly out of nowhere. It was down to about 48 to 50 degrees overnight. Now, if that happens for one night, it's not that big of a deal. But when I looked at our extended forecast, it was almost a week of those temperatures. So yesterday, I had to quickly catch as much fry as I could and move them inside. Now, this was not at all ideal because I hadn't prepped the bins and I hadn't prepped my tanks downstairs. So I'll show you some footage of all that and what I got from the tubs in just a few minutes. I also ran into some interesting predaceous issues in the tubs that weren't there as recently as last week. If you remember correctly, and I'll link to it, I showed you guys last week how good all the fry was doing. And it's pretty incredible what can happen so quickly in the bins. So, in an ideal world, if I was prepping to move my fish indoors, I would do one of two things. I would water change the bins to get the source water from the bins closer to my tap water to make it easier on the fish when I move them inside. And to do that, I would just do simple, small volume water changes every day in order to get that bin water closer to my tap, because at this point, it's almost exclusively rainwater, which is generally extremely soft. And while my tap water is not particularly hard, it's still a big difference. So, when I plan for moving fish indoors, what I'll do is a small water change every single day for about a week to 10 days until it's at least half tap water. And then when I move it inside, I can move them in half bin water and then fill up the rest with tap. Unfortunately, because this cold snap caught me by surprise, that's not at all what happened. Instead, what I had to do, and the other alternative, is to move the fish indoors with water that you bring inside from the bins. Now, there's a couple of reasons I don't like to do this. One is that I have to keep buckets of water in my fish room for water changes on the fry. The other is that if there's any sort of insect eggs, sometimes you can transfer those pests indoors. Now, I haven't moved any plants from outdoors inside yet, but I try and be really careful, especially with the small creatures that I work with, to not move inside predaceous insects or their larvae. So basically what I did yesterday is I started out by pulling all of the water hyacinth, all of the floating plant, out of the bin. Now at this point they're already looking kind of rough, so I'm just going to discard those. I then pulled out my lily tubs, disconnected my hanging baskets, and moved all of those to the side. And this makes it a little bit easier to catch the fry. I went through, I caught whatever fry that I could. I drained most of the tubs completely. I left a few tubs with a couple of inches of water just to put my baskets that had been hanging in, because it's still pretty good growing season for the vast majority of the plants. They can stay outside until about the time when it's going to hit freezing. Generally, I start to overwinter them when the overnights are consistently in the low 40s. So I left the big 300-gallon bin about half full, and I put all of my buckets of lilies in there, and then I just put my baskets in a series of other tubs. So let's take a look. Hey guys, and welcome out to the bins. We're having a bit of a weather emergency around here. Well, not really an emergency in comparison to everything else going on in the world, but certainly a critical time for tubs. It was supposed to stay in the high 50s to low 60s overnight for a few more weeks, but last night it dropped down to 45. Unexpectedly, it was forecast for 55. So I am out here today collecting all the fry that I can because it's not supposed to get warm again for another week, and it's just too cold. So what I'm doing is pulling out all of the water hyacinth with those long trailing roots, shaking it out as I pull it in the hopes that any fry in it will fall into the tub. Then I am pulling out my buckets of lilies to move out of the way and scooping, scooping, scooping. Now, there have been some surprises in the tubs, which I'll show you in a minute. Some did really well, some not so much. And I had some new pests for the first time, but I only have a couple hours to get this done, so I just need to get to work. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm going to pull off the old and yellowing lily pads. I don't generally bother with this throughout the season, but it can't hurt right now to do so. Luckily for me, this big tub has not been impacted. I think that's mainly because it's so big. It's better insulated and holds its temperature better. The little tubs, I know, even from just checking last Thursday for you guys, my fry counts are way down from one night of cold, and it's all my fault. I should have paid attention. Just so busy doing other things, I didn't look that close at the weather, and when it gets down on the cusp like it is, you really just have to be careful. See how long the roots get in these guys, and that's what made it so perfect for harboring all the eggs and small fry. Now, I'm not focused on getting every single fry out of this tub right now. I just want to make sure I get enough that they won't be a total loss. If you guys have been with me for a while, you know that last year was devastating. We had a similar cold snap, but it was about a week or two later. I had already planned to bring things in earlier than I have in the past 10 years, but this doesn't appear to be soon enough for most of it. But it just doesn't appear to be soon enough for some of the tubs. Now, I'm also choosing to do this in late morning because with the sun that hits the water right now, it makes it way easier to catch fry. There's some really gorgeous fish in here. Now, one of the things you have to do as you're collecting fry is collect all this algae and inspect it before you toss it aside. What you're looking for is basically shiny eyeballs, because there's going to be all sizes of fry, and I don't want to throw any of them away. I have to say, I am exceptionally pleased with the yield from this tub. I've already pulled quite a bit of fry out of here, and I still see no end in sight to the amount, so that's pretty exciting. I think in the future I'm going to try and move to bigger tubs, keep my eyes peeled for more of these large ones, because the yield is just staggering. Now, in an ideal world, the weather would cooperate, and I would have about another 3 weeks to leave all this out here, even longer for the plants. These lilies can stay out until it gets pretty darn chilly. But unfortunately, the rest of the weather is just not cooperating. Look at those roots. Isn't that incredible? Now, this is a mixture of the water hyacinth and the sensitive plant. If you guys remember correctly, I put 2 or 3 of these water hyacinths in here. And there's a reason they're invasive, or banned and considered invasive in a lot of areas. And that's because they just spread like wildfire. So as you can see, I have made an incredibly big mess. But I'm going to be out of town this week, so the only day I have to do this is today. And I have a feeling if I would have waited till tomorrow, well, a lot of my fry would be dead. Let's start over here. This was the Kubatai bin, and I did get a couple of fry, maybe like 10 or 12. And I only found, the strangest thing is I only got 3 adults out, and for the first time in my tubbing career, there was an infestation of this really awful bug, and I collected some in the bottom of this bucket. And once it clears up, I'll show them to you. But they were obviously predatory, because just a week ago I had tons of fry in this tub, and now there's like 10. The CPDs did a little bit better. And I think there's actually still quite a few in there, but I have to remove those baskets in order to access them. Now everything's really gross because obviously I just pulled it out of the bins. But you can sort of see in this container, that might help a little bit. Now you may be wondering why I left some of the mulm in the containers, and that's because I have all size fish in this, and you can see up at the top there's little teeny tinies all the way to adult size, and I don't want the adults to eat the babies while they're in transit to the basement. But that bottom quarter of this container is pretty much full of fry, and there could maybe be 100 or so. The trigonostigma, I have a feeling I haven't really caught many of their fry. These are the ones that were once thought extinct. You can see there's some fry in there, some that even got to adult size, because I think I only moved like 5 of these guys out, and you can see how big the females are. And also, this is a fish that in the aquarium has very little color, and you can see they look really awesome. These are the Danio-Chopre. Again, last week there were tons of fry in there, and today not that many, but it's another case of I think I need to be able to pool all the baskets. So I'm working on draining the 300 so that I can move all the baskets into that and keep looking for fry. Here is a portion of what I collected from the 300 gallon. You can see the meteor minnows, you can see the orange hatchets, and about 80 gazillion fry. It's pretty much packed wall to wall with fry. They can hardly move. There's so many. And for the lemon white clouds, I found 2 fry and no adults. But again, this is a bin that's very shallow and has a ton of plants. So I'm working now on making sure I have the vast majority of fish out of this 300 gallon. I'm going to drain it down till it's shallow so I can set those other, so I can cut the ties that are holding all the planters at the surface, throw them in there, and then work on draining the tubs to look for more fry of the other species. And I'll leave this one running for a while because the white clouds can do quite well outside. But I want to let my plants finish maturing and wait until it's a good time to overwinter them as well. So now I'm just going to drain this 300 gallon till it's maybe 6 or 8 inches deep, and then I can set all the plants into it and allow them to continue growing until it's a good time to move them out. Here again, are all the fry from this bin, and you can see it's a whole lot. So I drained the 300 gallon about halfway and moved all the lilies into there. This will give any fry that I missed a chance to grow out and these plants a chance to finish growing. And I drained this little guy into a net and collected the rest of the fry and left maybe, I don't know, a couple inches of water in there. Just enough to keep the roots of the pots wet. Next I'll drain this one, and I'm working on draining this one just so that I have enough space to move all the baskets and finish harvesting fry. This is a big job and it's not particularly fun. This is the water hyacinth pile from the 300 gallon. This is a giant piece of sensitive plant. I have bins everywhere and fry everywhere. The 80 gallon tubs I have drilled at the bottom, so I just pop off this top piece and run it out to a net, and that just ensures that I don't miss any of the fry from those bins. You can see drilled there. Just run it down to a lower point in the yard and drain away, and then check the net from time to time. Nearly done. I have to drain this one, and I still have shrimp out in that back corner that I think I'm going to leave for a bit longer yet. Now this planter is one that is from that Kubatai tub that was infested with carnivorous water beetles, which I'm going to show you as soon as things clear up. So this is a plant that I will not overwinter. This one will be sacrificial. I'll just let it dry out and my chickens pick at it and hope that those things never come back again. The Kubatai tub was infested with these beetle things. I mean, there's hundreds of them. And I think they must have been eating my fish and fry. I'm not entirely sure what they are, but I'm going to find out. Pretty disappointing. Drained, drained, lowered, drained, drained, drained. This one has a couple inches of water, and this is the only one left to get to that has shrimp, which I put in really late in the season, so I doubt they're going to do anything, so I'm not in a big hurry. Again, I'm going to leave these plants for a few more weeks until things really get chilly. And now I have to move all the fry to the basement. And I've collected a few 5-gallon buckets of tub water to move them downstairs. Now you guys are going to notice first off that this water's pretty dirty, and again that's because I had to move in water from outdoors in order to be able to move these fish in a hurry. Now over the next week to 10 days I'll do small volume water changes in order to clean this out, remove the debris, and get them back to my tap. Also, in a normal circumstance I would have sorted all the fry and put them into different tanks. However, because I had a limited amount of buckets of water to carry downstairs, I combined fry in this case. And you can see there are fish of all sizes and several species in this aquarium. Once I get them back into my tap water, I'll sort them completely and then move them into their own aquariums. Luckily for me, the vast majority of these species are very easy to differentiate. You can see how nice the colors are, especially on the CPDs and the Chopre. But even on those little trigonostigmas in the aquarium, a lot of times they're very sort of gray and silver in coloration, and they have incredible color from being outside. They're almost red. And this is probably from eating live food as well as being in green water and having just constant supplies of food. Let's take a look at the minnows. Now, this is the minnow and the orange hatchet yield that I grabbed from the 300 gallon. As you can see, this was a really good yield. There is just fry of all sizes everywhere, and I moved these guys into a planted tank mainly because there were so many teeny tiny fry. I wanted to make sure that there were adequate places for them to hide. Check out the color on the minnows. It is stunning. They are glowing. And these little orange hatchet fry, you can see how they get that name. They are like day glow orange. Absolutely gorgeous. Now again, once I get these guys back to tap water, I'll sort them out and move them into their own aquariums. All in all, I feel like my yield was pretty darn good this year. One year I'll get the weather right. You know, for the 12 years I've been doing this, or 11 years I've been doing this, it's only been the past 2 years that the weather's really caught me by surprise like this. It's very unfortunate. But luckily enough, I was able to get all these guys in. And there's probably about 400 or so fish in this aquarium. I did, as you can see in the top left corner, drop in some polyfilter, and that was to remove some of the tannins, as well as, you know, protect all this fry from any potential ammonia burn from moving them inside. Look at these hatchet fish from being outside. Absolutely incredible. The moral of the story is keep a really close eye on your weather. Generally, I have my fish out into the middle of September, but this year I had to pull them in early. And I know in another week it's going to get warm again. But last year, with the heavy losses I had to my fry, I didn't want to gamble this year. as always, thank you guys for your continued support. Make sure you're checking your weather forecast if you're participating in summer tubbing. Let me know below if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos.